my gullible young cadet, for I shall impart upon you the sacred knowledge of how to interact safely with a human. Zix-9 leaned in closer, all four of his eyes wide with anticipation. Captain Kloop cleared her throat equivalent and began her lecture. Rule number 1. Never, ever, under any circumstances, mention their height or weight. Humans are bizarrely sensitive about their physical dimensions. You'd think a species capable of interstellar travel would have moved past such trivialities, but no. They're like overgrown larvae with nuclear capabilities. The young cadet furiously took notes on his datapad, his mandibles clicking nervously. Rule number 2, Kloop continued. Avoid discussing their political systems. Humans have this quaint notion called democracy, where they periodically gather to shout at each other and then choose the loudest shouter to lead them. It's like watching a Gorgonian mating ritual, but with less slime and more hand-waving. Zix-9 nodded, trying to imagine such a chaotic process. But Captain, how do they get anything done? That's the beauty of it, my naive little larva. They don't. They spend most of their time arguing about how to fix things while simultaneously breaking more things. It's a never-ending cycle of cosmic comedy. The captain paused, her gelatinous form jiggling with what Zix-9 assumed was suppressed laughter. Now, rule number 3 is crucial. Never underestimate their capacity for both brilliance and stupidity. These creatures invented faster-than-light travel before they figured out how to cure the common cold. They can split atoms but can't agree on whether their planet is round or flat. Flat? But that's impossible! Zix-9 exclaimed. Exactly. Welcome to the wonderful world of human logic, where impossibility is just a suggestion. Moving on to Rule 4. Be prepared for their obsession with fictional characters. Humans spend an inordinate amount of time discussing and arguing about people who don't exist. It's like they've collectively decided reality isn't exciting enough, so they've invented alternate universes to argue about. Zix-9's antennae drooped in confusion. But why would they do that? Why do humans do anything? Kloop retorted. The same reason they climb mountains or dive into oceans, because it's there. Or in this case, because it isn't there, but they wish it was. The young cadet's head was spinning. Humans were proving to be far more complex than he'd anticipated. Now pay attention to Rule 5, Kloop said, her voice taking on a more serious tone. Despite all their quirks and foibles, never underestimate humans. They're resourceful, adaptable, and have an annoying habit of surviving things that should, by all rights, annihilate them. They're like the cockroaches of the galaxy, but with opposable thumbs and a penchant for explosions. Zix-9 gulped audibly. They sound terrifying, Captain. Terrifying? Maybe, but they're also oddly endearing, Kloop admitted, a hint of fondness in her gelatinous voice. They'll wage war over the most trivial things, then turn around and risk their lives to save a creature they've never met. They're walking contradictions, these humans. The captain's form rippled thoughtfully. Which brings us to the final and most important rule. Always, always have a sense of humor when dealing with humans. They appreciate a good laugh, even if it's at their own expense. In fact, especially if it's at their own expense. Zix-9 finished his notes with a flourish. Thank you, Captain. I feel much more prepared now. But, may I ask one last question? Go ahead, Cadet. Why do we bother interacting with them at all? They sound like more trouble than they're worth. Captain Kloop's form vibrated with laughter. Oh, my dear Zix-9, that's the best part. Humans are the universe's ultimate entertainment. Just when you think you've got them figured out, they'll surprise you. They're unpredictable, irrational, and absolutely fascinating. Plus, they make this thing called pizza that's to die for. Zix-9 tilted his head, puzzled. Pizza? Trust me, Cadet. Once you try it, you'll understand why we put up with all their nonsense. Now let's prepare for our diplomatic mission. Remember, smile with all your mandibles. Don't mention their puny number of limbs. And for the love of the galaxy, don't ask them to take you to their leader. The last time someone did that, we ended up with an intergalactic incident involving a rubber chicken, 3 tons of maple syrup, and a very confused llama. As Zix-9 followed his captain out of the briefing room, he couldn't help but feel a mix of terror and excitement. Humans sounded like the most perplexing species in the universe. But as he was about to learn, that was precisely what made them so captivating. As Zix-9 and Captain Kloop approached the airlock, preparing to board the human diplomatic vessel, the young cadet felt his exoskeleton tingle with anticipation. The captain turned to him, her gelatinous form quivering with what he hoped was encouragement. Remember, Zix-9, humans are like quantum particles. The moment you think you've got them figured out, they'll be somewhere else entirely, probably doing something inexplicable and mildly dangerous. The airlock hissed open, revealing a corridor that seemed absurdly large to the insectoid cadet. At the end stood two humans, grinning widely in a way that made Zix-9 wonder if they were about to attack or offer him a snack. "Welcome aboard the USS Improbable!" The taller human boomed, his voice echoing off the metal walls. "I'm Captain Jack Harper, and this is my first officer, Dr. Zoe Chen. We're thrilled to have you on board for this historic meeting of species." Zix-9 glanced at Captain Kloop, who gave him an imperceptible nod. Taking a deep breath, the cadet stepped forward. "Greetings, Captain—" His introduction was cut short as he tripped over his own mandibles, tumbling forward in a tangle of limbs. To his horror, he found himself sprawled at the feet of the human captain. "Whoa there, little fella," Captain Harper chuckled, reaching down to help Zix-9 up. "Looks like someone's got a case of the space jitters." As the human's hand wrapped around his exoskeleton, Zix-9 braced himself for crushing strength. Instead, he found the touch surprisingly gentle. Captain Harper set him upright with ease, still grinning. "Thank you!" Zix-9 chittered, trying to regain his composure. "I apologize for my clumsiness. I hope this doesn't violate any diplomatic protocols." Dr. Chen laughed, a sound that reminded Zix-9 of tinkling crystals. "Oh please, if clumsiness violated protocols, half our crew would be in the brig. You should see Captain Harper after our annual eggnog extravaganza." "Zoe," Harper mock scolded, his cheeks turning an interesting shade of pink. "We agreed never to speak of the tinsel incident again." Captain Kloop oozed forward, her gelatinous form rippling with amusement. "I see some things are universal across species. Perhaps we should move to a more formal setting for our discussions." Of course," Harper agreed, gesturing down the corridor. "We've prepared a conference room. Although, fair warning, our replicator's been on the fritz lately. Last time we tried to make coffee, it gave us something that looked like motor oil and tasted like despair." As they walked, Zix-9 found himself falling into step beside Dr. Chen. Curiosity got the better of him. "Dr. Chen, if I may ask, what's your area of expertise?" "Oh, I'm a xenobiologist," she replied cheerfully. "I study alien life forms. You know, trying to figure out how different species tick, why some have 3 hearts and others have none, that sort of thing." "That sounds fascinating," Zix-9 said, his antennae perking up with interest. "It is, although sometimes it gets a bit messy. There was this one time on Rigel 7 where I accidentally insulted the native fauna by sneezing. Turns out, what we consider a bodily function is their equivalent of a marriage proposal. Let's just say I narrowly avoided becoming the bride of a very amorous and very slimy cave dweller." Zix-9's mandibles clicked in what he hoped was a sympathetic manner. "That sounds eventful." "Oh, it was. But that's the beauty of space exploration, isn't it? Every day is an adventure, filled with new discoveries, potential diplomatic incidents, and the occasional need to run screaming from accidentally enraged locals." As they entered the conference room, Zix-9 couldn't help but feel a growing sense of warmth towards these strange, contradictory creatures. Yes, they were unpredictable and often nonsensical, but there was something undeniably charming about their enthusiasm and resilience. Captain Harper took his seat at the head of the table, gesturing for the others to join him. "Now then, shall we begin our cultural exchange? I'm particularly excited to learn about your species' approach to interpretive dance. We humans have a rich tradition of expressing complex emotions through the medium of flailing about wildly to music." Zix-9 glanced at Captain Kloop, who was doing her best to maintain a diplomatic demeanor despite her obvious amusement. As the young cadet settled into his seat, he realized that his training had only scratched the surface of human complexity. This mission was going to be far more interesting, and likely far more chaotic, than he could have ever imagined. And so began the great intergalactic cultural exchange, filled with misunderstandings, laughter, and the occasional accidental declaration of war, quickly smoothed over with the liberal application of what the humans called pizza and dad jokes. It was, as Captain Kloop would later describe in her mission report, a glorious disaster of cosmic proportions, and the most fun I've had in 3 centuries of space exploration. As the cultural exchange progressed, Zix-9 found himself increasingly fascinated by the humans' ability to turn even the most serious discussions into opportunities for humor and unexpected tangents. Captain Harper was in the middle of explaining Earth's geopolitical structure when he suddenly veered off course. "And that's why we have countries. Although, if you ask me, the real challenge is deciding which country makes the best tacos. It's a debate that's caused more diplomatic incidents than our actual foreign policy." Dr. Chen rolled her eyes good-naturedly. Jack, I'm not sure that's entirely relevant to interspecies relations. Au contraire, my dear doctor, Harper replied with a wink. I'll have you know that tacos have been responsible for at least 3 intergalactic peace treaties. Never underestimate the power of perfectly seasoned meat in a tortilla. Zix-9's antenna twitched in confusion. Excuse me, but what exactly is a taco? The humans exchanged a look of mock horror. You've never had a taco? Harper gasped, clutching his chest dramatically. This is a travesty of galactic proportions. Zoe, fire up the replicator. It's time for an emergency taco intervention. As Dr. Chen hurried to the replicator, Captain Kloop oozed closer to Zix-9. Brace yourself, cadet, she whispered. You're about to experience one of humanity's greatest weapons, their cuisine. Moments later, a plate of steaming, oddly shaped objects appeared before Zix-9. The aroma was unlike anything he'd ever encountered, a complex blend of spices and textures that made his sensory organs tingle. Go on, Harper encouraged, grinning from ear to ear. Take a bite, just be careful not to. But it was too late. Zix-9, in his eagerness to embrace human culture, had already shoved an entire taco into his mandibles. The resulting explosion of flavors and textures was overwhelming. Spices danced across his palate, the crunch of the shell contrasting beautifully with the softness of the filling. It was a revelation. It was also incredibly messy. Taco debris sprayed across the conference table, painting a Jackson Pollock of salsa and guacamole across the formerly pristine surface. Let it fall apart, Harper finished lamely, trying and failing to suppress his laughter. For a moment, silence reigned in the conference room. Then, to everyone's surprise, Zix-9 began to laugh. It was a strange, chittering sound, but unmistakably one of joy. This is magnificent, he exclaimed, still chuckling. Is all human food this chaotic and delicious? Dr. Chen grinned. Oh, honey, you ain't seen nothing yet. Wait until we introduce you to spaghetti. As the impromptu taco party continued, the formal boundaries of the diplomatic meeting began to dissolve. Stories were shared, jokes were told, some landing better than others across the species divide, and a genuine camaraderie began to form. Captain Kloop, observing the scene with a mixture of amusement and resignation, couldn't help but marvel at the human's ability to turn a potential diplomatic disaster into a bonding experience. She'd seen countless first contacts in her long career, but none quite like this. As the evening wore on, the conversation took increasingly bizarre turns. Zix-9 found himself attempting to explain the intricacies of his species' mating dances, which somehow led to Captain Harper demonstrating the Macarena, a sight that would be forever seared into the young cadet's memory. And this, Harper panted, arms flailing in what he assured them was a choreographed manner, is an essential part of human culture. You haven't truly experienced Earth until you've done the Macarena at a wedding while slightly intoxicated. Dr. Chen, who had been recording the entire spectacle, chimed in. Don't forget to mention the chicken dance, Jack. It's equally ridiculous and inexplicably popular. Zix-9, his exoskeleton still stained with taco remnants, watched in fascination. And these dances, they serve a purpose in your society? Harper paused mid-flail. Purpose? Well, I suppose they serve to embarrass us collectively as a species, but more importantly, they're fun. Sometimes, Zix-9, the only purpose you need is to enjoy yourself and make memories. As the night wore on, filled with more food, more dances, and increasingly ludicrous attempts at cross-species communication, Zix-9 found himself revising everything he thought he knew about humans. Yes, they were chaotic, unpredictable, and often nonsensical, but they were also warm, welcoming, and possessed an incredible ability to find joy in the absurdities of life. When it was finally time for the alien delegation to depart, Zix-9 felt a surprising pang of sadness. He'd come aboard expecting a formal, perhaps even tense, diplomatic exchange. Instead, he'd found friendship, laughter, and a new appreciation for the beautiful chaos of the universe. As they said their goodbyes, Captain Harper pressed a small package into Zix-9's appendages. A little something to remember us by, he said with a wink. Just add water and enjoy. But maybe do it outside. It can get a bit explosive. Zix-9 chittered his thanks, clutching the mysterious gift. As he and Captain Kloop made their way back to their own ship, the young cadet felt forever changed. The universe, he realized, was far stranger and more wonderful than he'd ever imagined. And somewhere out there, a group of humans was probably inventing a new dance to commemorate the occasion, one that would undoubtedly involve far too many limb movements and a high probability of accidental injury. But that, Zix-9 thought with a chitter of laughter, was precisely what made them so fascinating. Back aboard their own vessel, Captain Kloop and Zix-9 settled into the familiar surroundings of their command bridge. The young cadet's mind was still reeling from the whirlwind of experiences he'd just had. "Well, Zix-9," Captain Kloop burbled, her gelatinous form rippling with amusement. "What did you think of your first close encounter with humans?" Zix-9's antennae twitched thoughtfully. "It was not at all what I expected, Captain. They're so chaotic, and yet somehow endearing." "That's humans for you," Kloop chuckled. "Just when you think you've got them figured out, they'll surprise you with a taco or a dance move that defies the laws of physics." As they prepared for departure, Zix-9 couldn't help but fidget with the mysterious package Captain Harper had given him. Curiosity finally got the better of him. "Captain, do you think it would be safe to open this now?" Kloop's form shimmered in what Zix-9 had come to recognize as her equivalent of a shrug. "Well, Harper did say to add water and do it outside, but we're in space, so close enough?" With trembling appendages, Zix-9 carefully opened the package. Inside was a small, unassuming tablet with a note that read, "For those times when you need a little bit of Earth chaos in your life, enjoy responsibly. Or don't. We're not your space parents." "Should I—" Zix-9 looked at his captain uncertainly. "Oh, go on," Kloop encouraged. "What's the worst that could happen?" Those words, Zix-9 would later reflect, should have been a warning. But caught up in the excitement of the moment, he dropped the tablet into a nearby hydration unit. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a sound like a miniature supernova, the hydration unit erupted in a fountain of multicolored foam. It expanded rapidly, filling the bridge with shimmering, iridescent bubbles that seemed to defy gravity. Alarms blared as the ship's systems tried to make sense of the sudden influx of whatever this was. Crew members rushed onto the bridge, only to stop short at the sight of their captain and the young cadet floating in a sea of rainbow-hued foam. "What in the name of the Galactic Corps is going on here?" demanded the ship's security officer, his tentacles flailing in confusion. Zix-9, covered head to thorax in foam, could only click his mandibles helplessly. I think it's something called a bath bomb?" Captain Kloop, far from being angry, was vibrating with laughter. "Oh, those brilliant, chaotic humans! They've managed to turn basic hygiene into an adventure." As the crew scrambled to contain the ever-expanding foam party, Zix-9 couldn't help but join in his captain's laughter. This, he realized, was what Captain Harper had meant about making memories. Over the next few hours, as they cleaned up the mess and tried to explain to increasingly bewildered superior officers why their ship now smelled like lavender and cosmic mischief, Zix-9 found himself recounting tales of his time aboard the human vessel. With each retelling, the stories grew more outlandish, the humans more fascinating. By the time they reached their home station, rumors of the strange and wonderful humans had spread throughout the ship. Crew members who had initially been wary of the alien species were now clamoring for a chance to meet them, drawn in by tales of tacos, inexplicable dances, and bath products that doubled as ship-wide entertainment systems. As they disembarked, Captain Kloop placed a gelatinous appendage on Zix-9's shoulder. "You know, Cadet, I think we've learned an important lesson here." "What's that, Captain?" Zix-9 asked, still picking bits of glittery foam from his exoskeleton. "Sometimes the most valuable diplomatic tool isn't a carefully worded treaty or a show of strength. Sometimes it's the ability to laugh at yourself, share a meal, and dance like no one's watching, even if the entire galaxy is." Zix-9 nodded thoughtfully. "Do you think we'll see the humans again?" Kloop's form shimmered with mirth. "Oh, I'm counting on it. After all, someone needs to teach them our species' version of the Macarena. I'm thinking we call it the Galactic Wiggle. It'll involve at least 3 dimensions, and possibly a small gravitational anomaly." As they made their way to the debriefing room, leaving a trail of sparkly foam in their wake, Zix-9 realized that his understanding of the universe had fundamentally shifted. It wasn't just a vast, cold expanse filled with celestial bodies and cosmic phenomena. It was also home to beings who could turn something as simple as a bath product into an intergalactic incident. And somehow that made the cosmos seem a whole lot brighter. Little did Zix-9 know, this was just the beginning of his adventures with the human race. In the years to come, he would find himself embroiled in interstellar karaoke competitions, accidentally becoming the galaxy's first insectoid influencer, and playing a crucial role in negotiating peace between warring factions, using nothing but a collection of Earth's dad jokes and a surprisingly persuasive PowerPoint presentation on the unifying power of pizza. But those, as they say, are stories for another time. For now, Zix-9 had a debriefing to attend, a ship to deglitter, and a newfound appreciation for the beautiful chaos that humans brought to the cosmos. Months passed, and the ripples of Zix-9's encounter with the humans spread throughout the galactic community. What had started as a simple diplomatic mission had somehow snowballed into a full-blown cultural phenomenon. Zix-9 found himself unexpectedly thrust into the spotlight. His tales of human shenanigans had gone viral, or whatever the interstellar equivalent of viral was. Perhaps gone supernova would be more apt. He was being invited to give lectures at prestigious cosmic academies, appear on holovision shows, and even write a book titled Humanity F Yeah, a field guide to Earth's lovable lunatics. It was during one such lecture at the Galactic Institute of Xenostudies that Zix-9's life took another unexpected turn. And so, he chittered to a packed auditorium of various alien species. That's how I learned that human social media is less about socializing and more about arguing with strangers and sharing pictures of small, furry Earth creatures called cats. The audience chittered, burbled, and emitted various sounds of amusement and confusion. As Zix-9 wrapped up his talk, a commotion at the back of the hall caught his attention. To his surprise, Captain Jack Harper and Dr. Zoe Chen came barreling down the aisle, looking slightly singed and entirely too excited. "Zix-9, buddy," Harper called out, waving what looked suspiciously like a partially melted toaster. "Boy, do we have a proposition for you." The young cadet's antennae twitched nervously. "Captain Harper? Dr. Chen? What are you doing here? And why do you smell like burnt toast and regret?" Dr. Chen grinned, her lab coat covered in a substance that Zix-9 decided he'd rather not identify. "Oh, just a little transporter accident. Turns out you should never try to beam yourself while making breakfast. But never mind that. We've got bigger fish to fry. Metaphorically speaking, of course. Although now that I mention it, I am kind of hungry." Harper cut in, his eyes gleaming with the kind of manic enthusiasm that Zix-9 had learned usually preceded either a brilliant idea or a spectacular disaster. "Often both. We're putting together an intergalactic cultural exchange program, and we want you to be part of it." Zix-9's mandibles clicked in surprise. "Me? But I'm just a cadet. Surely there are more qualified—" "Nonsense!" Harper interrupted. "You're perfect. You've already got a fan base. You understand our unique approach to diplomacy. And most importantly, you can appreciate a good taco. What more qualifications do you need?" Before Zix-9 could formulate a response, the air shimmered, and Captain Kloop materialized beside them, her gelatinous form wobbling with barely contained excitement. "Did someone say intergalactic cultural exchange?" she burbled. "Count me in. I've been dying to introduce the concept of gelatin desserts to the wider cosmic community. It's about time the universe learned the joy of foods that jiggle." As the humans excitedly outlined their plans, involving everything from a galactic food truck festival to an interspecies dance-off, Zix-9 felt a mixture of trepidation and exhilaration. This was far beyond anything covered in his diplomatic training. And yet, he couldn't help but feel that this chaotic, probably ill-advised venture was exactly what the universe needed. "All right," he finally said, his voice filled with determination. "I'm in, but on one condition." The others looked at him expectantly. "We need to find a way to make tacos that are compatible with all known sentient digestive systems. I refuse to let any species miss out on that particular Earth delicacy." Harper's face split into a grin so wide it threatened to escape the confines of his skull. "Zix-9, my insectoid friend, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful, albeit probably explosive, friendship." And so began the next chapter in Zix-9's improbable journey. The Intergalactic Cultural Exchange Program, quickly dubbed ICP, much to the confusion of actual ice-based lifeforms, was launched with great fanfare and only minor incidents involving misunderstandings about human idioms. "No, Ambassador Blurgs, when we say break a leg, we don't actually want you to injure yourself. It's just you know what? Maybe we should rethink some of our expressions." As Zix-9 boarded the newly christened USS Serendipity, so named because, as Harper put it, half our best discoveries happen by accident anyway, he couldn't help but feel that the universe was in for quite a ride. With a crew composed of humans, his own species, Captain Kloop's gelatinous kind, and a rotating cast of alien diplomats, chefs, artists, and the occasional stowaway tribble, their mission to spread understanding, laughter, and possibly indigestion across the cosmos was about to begin. Little did he know that their first stop would involve mediating a dispute between a race of sentient plant beings and a species of interstellar vegans, all while trying to explain the concept of a potluck dinner to beings who considered eating together a form of intimate bonding, usually reserved for life mates. But that, as always, is a story for another time. For now, Zix-9 had a ship to catch, a universe to explore, and a whole lot of tacos to engineer. As the USS Serendipity cruised through the star-speckled vastness of space, Zix-9 found himself adapting to life aboard a human vessel, with varying degrees of success. The ship itself seemed to be a perfect metaphor for humanity, a blend of cutting-edge technology and inexplicable design choices that could only be described as, because we thought it would be cool. Take, for example, the holodeck, a marvel of engineering capable of simulating any environment, which was currently being used to host an interspecies sock-sliding competition. "Come on, Zix-9," Captain Harper called out, his socks allowing him to glide across the simulated polished floor with surprising grace. "You've got 6 legs. You should be dominating this." Zix-9, sprawled in an ungainly heap of limbs and antennae, chittered indignantly. "In case you haven't noticed, Captain, my species didn't evolve with feet. We don't exactly have a rich tradition of sock-based activities." Dr. Chen skidded to a stop beside them, her hair wild and her eyes bright with amusement. "Maybe we should switch to zero-G sock puppetry instead. Level the playing field a bit?" Before Zix-9 could voice his concerns about the wisdom of combining zero gravity with amateur puppetry, the ship's AI, affectionately named Dave, definitely a very efficient system, chimed in. "Attention, crew. We are approaching the chlorophylla system. Please prepare for first contact with the Botanicus species. And may I remind you all that the last time we had a first contact while half the crew was wearing novelty socks, it took 3 weeks and a crash course in footwear semiotics to smooth things over." Captain Harper sighed dramatically. "Dave, you buzzkill. Fine, everyone. Let's get our professional faces on. Zix-9, you up for being our liaison? You've got away with... well, not..." Zix-9 managed to right himself, trying to regain some semblance of dignity. "Of course, Captain. Though perhaps we should review the briefing on the Botanicus. I believe they're a photosynthesis-based life form with a complex social structure based on, root networks?" Dr. Chen nodded enthusiastically. "Oh yes. Fascinating species. They communicate through a combination of pheromones, colorful bioluminescence, and interpretive swaying. It's like a cross between a rave and a garden." As the crew prepared for their encounter, Zix-9 couldn't help but feel a mixture of excitement and trepidation. Each new species they met brought its own set of challenges and rewards. The universe, it turned out, was even stranger and more wonderful than he'd ever imagined. The Serendipity entered orbit around Chlorophylla, a lush green world that seemed to pulse with life. As they prepared to beam down, Captain Harper turned to his crew with a grin. "All right, team. Remember the Prime Directive? Don't do anything I wouldn't do. And if you do, name it after me." Dr. Chen rolled her eyes. "I thought the Prime Directive was about non-interference with developing cultures." Harper waved dismissively. "That's so last century. Our mission is cultural exchange. We're here to interfere in the most delightful ways possible." As the transporter beamed them down to the planet's surface, Zix-9 braced himself for whatever chaos awaited them. The landing party materialized in a clearing surrounded by towering iridescent plants that swayed gently despite the lack of wind. For a moment all was quiet. Then the plants around them began to pulse with soft, multicolored light. A sweet, almost musical scent filled the air. "Greetings, sky travelers," a melodious voice seemed to emanate from everywhere and nowhere. "We are the Botanicus. We welcome you to our world garden." Zix-9 stepped forward, his antennae twitching as he tried to process the myriad sensory inputs. "Greetings, noble Botanicus. We come in peace and in the spirit of friendship and cultural exchange." There was a rustling sound, and a being stepped forward from among the swaying plants. It looked like a walking bouquet, with petals of every color and vines that moved with surprising dexterity. "We are pleased to meet you," the Botanicus said, its petals shifting through a kaleidoscope of colors. "We have many questions about your worlds. For example, is it true that some species consume other life forms for sustenance? How barbaric and yet intriguing." Captain Harper cleared his throat nervously. "Ah, yes, well, about that. You see, it's a bit complicated." And so began another improbable first contact, filled with misunderstandings, impromptu botany lessons, and an incident involving Dr. Chen accidentally pollinating half the welcoming committee. But as Zix-9 watched humans and plants attempt to find common ground, sometimes literally, he realized that this beautiful, chaotic mess of cultural exchange was exactly what made the universe worth exploring. Little did they know that their attempts to explain the concept of salad to the Botanicus would lead to a philosophical crisis, a planet-wide revolution in plant-based consciousness, and the galaxy's first interspecies synchronized photosynthesis competition. But those, as always, are stories for another time. For now, Zix-9 had his appendages full trying to prevent Captain Harper from attempting to hug a